A small one tonight. Welcome back to Late Night with Dr. Paul. I'm here with Professor, Science Guru, Meteorologist, and generally oversmart celebrity Richard Zurwaski. You'll forgive the water in the glass. We've got some budget cuts we're dealing with, and
well,
you gotta.
Cheers.
We gotta make our choices. So it's your first time on the show.
Yes.
I can tell how excited you are just from your nervousness. I do enjoy your show, The Science Files. I listen to that regularly.
Thank you.
And I'm always forced to think how much better it would be if you had martinis on your show as well. Have you considered that?
I've considered it for Rick, but I think first thing in the morning it's a bit much. I think we should stick with the water and the coffee.
Don't knock it till you try it.
Well, we might give it if we do.
As a scientist, you need to keep an open mind about these things.
Absolutely. If we do, you'll be the first person we invite, first guest.
I appreciate it. I'm going to hold you to that. Now, a few weeks ago, for almost an hour, I think, you were the Green Party candidate for Clayton Park West.
Yes, I was.
In the next federal election. I saw that online. That's actually when I invited you on the show here, because I thought that was very exciting. Thought you would make an excellent MP. And then you deferred. What happened with that?
Well, the election hasn't been called, and when I read the Canada Elections Act, I discovered that as soon as I declare my candidacy, because I'm in the media, I'd have to quit my media job immediately. And so the Elections Act says either the declaration of the candidacy or the dropping of the writ, the candidate has to get off the air. And we don't know when the election is happening, so I decided to withdraw my candidacy so that I can consider it down the road. But right now, I'm not the candidate.
Okay. And even though you wouldn't have been a Conservative candidate, that's still an issue?
You're giving me chest pains right now.
Good. And so was that a challenge? I mean, there's some great parties out there. I know Harper would have loved to have had you on board.
I'm sure he would have, but muzzle doesn't go very well with me.
Maybe you could have put one on him.
Well, sometimes I think it wouldn't be a bad alternative, but I'm pretty disappointed in the Harper government, especially when it comes to the muzzling of scientists, the cutting of funding, the fact that we're putting less and less money into undirected research, and answering science questions for a living, which I've been doing for probably going on 35 years. That's been the business I've been in, is answering science questions, whether I do children's shows or documentaries or write books or on the air on the Science Files. It's appalling to think that we're slipping in the world rankings when it comes to science education and math education. And it's all because of the cutbacks. It's all because of the fact that the current government is really anti-science.
So how long has it been since you sent our Prime Minister a Christmas card?
Well, it has been a while.
At least a year?
At least a year.
All right. Something I wanted to bring up with you, and I've wanted to talk about this with somebody, but people on my show typically aren't appropriate for the topic. I'm always amazed at somewhere in the media, in the news, the whatever, there's always talk about the global problems we're facing, from overfishing to polluted water, to emissions, to climate change, to whatever. And it struck me as just common sense that the underlying problem that no one seems to talk about is there's too many bloody people on the planet. No one's addressing that, let alone the billions that are on their way.
Yeah.
And if we don't address that, how do we address the other issues?
Well, population is the central issue. We wouldn't be talking about environmental restrictions, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, global warming, greenhouse effect, acidification of the ocean, plastic problems, if it wasn't for the fact that we've got 7.3 billion people on the face of the earth, and every second another 3 people come into existence, giving us about 80 to 90 million new mouths to feed each and every year. If our population was closer to 1 billion, everybody could drive a Lexus, probably vacation down south as much as they want, and live in a huge home and not worry about energy consumption, because it wouldn't have an environmental impact that was so deleterious that we'd lose our ecological spaces for species and threaten ourselves environmentally. You're right, that's the central problem. Too many people, too much consumption. Until we address that problem, and the Club of Rome actually addressed that back in the 1970s when it came out with their Limits to Growth book. When we start to address that, then we will come up with solutions. And right now, population is off the table for a variety of reasons. We have a growth ethic as far as business goes. We have a growth ethic as far as the major religions are concerned. Like, we don't want to dabble into telling people how many babies they want to have. And we view that as a freedom. Or who can have them. And we voluntarily continue to have too many children. Now, the one area that we're making great inroads on is educating women. When we educate women all across the world, we find that birth rates drop. And we find that populations become stable and they start to fall. Unfortunately, education is not a priority in many countries, especially for women.
Like Newfoundland. So what can be done then? Because either we need to get fewer people, which most countries don't want to do. China was the one that, very publicly addressed the issue. Yes. And had their knuckles rapped for doing so.
Well, there were all sorts of other effects that happened. You wind up with abortions because they valued male children more than they did female children. You wound up with preferred people, biases, that kind of thing. And you can't have that.
But that doesn't make their attempt at addressing the issue wrong. It just means it wasn't being done properly. It's like saying we baked a cake. The cake didn't come out, therefore cakes are no good. I mean, you got the wrong recipe, but...
That's a wonderful way of putting it. And the recipe that we have right now is not working for us. We've got too much consumption, too many people. We're rapidly approaching a wall. The next decade is when we need to solve this problem. And right now, more than anything, the problem is not going to be solved by reducing the population. Whether we like it or not, our population is going to increase and top out between 10 and 12 billion people. And so what we have to do is figure out how we're going to stop the carbon dioxide from going into the atmosphere. And current estimates are that we need to cut back in the Western world. That includes the United States, Canada, Australia, and most of Europe has to cut back by 90%. 90%. And that's a huge amount. And recycling plastic or having other energy forms is not going to do it. What we need to do is stop waste. If we stopped waste immediately, 3/4 of our problem would be solved.